Good morning, everybody. My name is Sherry Prupis. I'm Director of Teaching and Learning with Technology at the VCCS. I support all 23 colleges. Some of you we have met in our roadshow that we've done with our accessibility expert page. Today with us, I want to introduce, and then I'm going to give you a few more instructions. Serbi, who is our presenter, and Nitesh, who I describe as our magician behind the curtain, because he's running the slide deck for us. This session is being recorded. We will share out the recording with you. And we are also asking you to put all your questions in Q&A. If you don't see it on the bottom of your screen, click more and you will see a box that says Q&A. And any questions that we don't get to by the end of this session, we will answer in the next day or so. When we share the recording, we will get out the answers to those questions for you as well. For some of you are new to the VCCS, welcome. We have a Department of Justice requirement, all higher ed does, that our digital materials are accessible, even if we teach in a face-to-face environment, but we're using Canvas to put in some lectures, some notes, assignments. All digital content has to be made accessible. This is a very strong intro session. It's also a good review for those of you who have already been working on making your materials accessible. For those of you who are watching the video at a later time, thank you so much. You can email me if you have a question that did not get answered. It is my pleasure at this time to turn this over to Serbi.
Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. Before we begin, let us talk about why actually we are here today. So today's session is about digital accessibility with a focus on tagging. So it may sound a little technical, but in reality, tagging can be the difference between a document that someone can fully use and one who cannot access it at all. So our goal today is to move beyond compliance and talk a little more about how we can make sure your digital content and documents can be accessible for everyone. Next slide, please. So before we dive into our session today, I would like to introduce myself and share why this work is so deeply personal to me. Hello, everyone. I'm Surabhi Lohia. I'm a mid-aged woman with fair skin tone and I wear plain glasses. Today, I'm seated in front of a blurred virtual Zoom background, actually. I'm sure you must be wondering, why am I describing myself aloud when you can see me? So it might be helpful for people who do not see to connect with those whom they are listening to. So this is how people with visual impairment would actually perceive videos or images, etc. I have spent over 11 years, 11 plus years in the digital space, leading strategies at Accenture and SAP Labs. Also, I have spoken in global conferences like AXCON and IIP webinars. But my real why started when I was 18 years old. That was the time I began to lose my eyesight. And suddenly the entire digital world that I had taken for granted starting closing off on me. So I had no clue at all whether I would be able to access computers again in my life. I had actually I started to relearn how to access technology, digital content, etc. And that was when I was introduced to screen readers, which is, I also call it like a digital superhero for people with blindness. This lived experience is what led me to my early career, where I trained over 150 visually impaired students. So I actually know the frustration when a document does not read correctly. And I also know the empowerment that comes when someone takes that extra step to make their materials accessible. So as we walk through the technical side of tagging today, I bring both perspectives to the table. That is the professional expertise of a consultant and the lived reality of someone who relies on these tags to access content on a daily basis. Next slide, please. Let us now take a quick look at what we'll be covering together today. First, we are going to demystify what we actually mean by semantic tagging. I'll definitely try to keep the jargon to the minimum and focus what it actually looks like in real everyday work. So whether you're teaching, supporting courses, or creating campus content, it would definitely help you. Then we will look at some of the most common accessibility potholes, those small, well-intentional things that we all do and which can accidentally create a dead end for someone using assistive technology. From there, we will get into the real substance of accessible documents. We'll start with basics like text, font, color, contrast, and move into the structural pieces like headings, list, links, tables, and images. We'll also look at some of the go-to tools and quick tips so that you can check accessibility without turning it into all-day project. Towards the end, we'll have a quick review of what is coming up in our future sessions, and then we'll wrap up with a short demo and open up the floor for your questions and answers. By the end of this session, you'll definitely understand why accessibility is not just a fix, but is actually designing for everyone from the beginning itself. Next slide, please. Now, let us talk about the term of the hour, that is semantic tag. Now, it may sound too technical, but it is something we already use regularly on a daily basis. So you can think of semantic tags like invisible labels that quietly organizes and gives meaning to everything on a page. Now, they are what assistive technology like screen readers use to understand and navigate the content. Imagine them as signposts that help a user build a mental map of your document. For example, in a restaurant menu, when you see large, bold text on the top, your brain immediately knows this is a heading or this is the appetizer section. No one has to explain it to you. But for a screen reader, it does not process that information visually. It only understands the structure behind the scenes. That is exactly what semantic tag does. It tells the system what a piece of content is, like headings, links, etc., not just what it looks like. Now, here's another example. Think about a recipe. If the ingredients are written in one long sentence, it would definitely work, but it would be very hard to read and process the entire information at once. Similarly, if the same ingredients are tagged as a list, the assistive technology, like screen reader, would know that there are 5 separate items and it can be moved to each item separately instead of reading one full giant blob of text at once. The same idea applies to any digital content that we create, like list show steps or requirements. Similarly, we have heading tags that lets someone jump quickly to assignments or maybe important dates or important sections that they want to visit. Tables, when tagged correctly, it actually makes sense to people using assistive technology instead of sounding like some random data with no connection. So semantic tagging does not mean losing visual design. Good accessibility actually improves good design. And by adding the tags, you're just making sure that the structure that your eyes see is the same structure that someone else hears with screen reader. This applies to any platform, whether you're using Word, PowerPoint, PDF, email, learning systems, or web pages. The tools may change, but the idea stays the same throughout. At the end of the day, semantic tags gives your document a brain, and it turns a flat page into a map that everyone can access and navigate confidently, no matter how they access the content or even if it is using assistive technologies. Next slide, please. So one of the most common question I often hear is, do we need to give up visual design to make things accessible? Now, to be very honest, it is absolutely, there's nothing wrong with making your documents look great. In fact, we actually want the content to be visually engaging, and the goal is not to take that away at all. What you are aiming for is to balance both and make sure the visual design and the digital structure work together. Think of it like a house where the decoration could be the paint, the furniture, the lighting, etc., which makes it feel welcoming. But the structure is the blueprint and the foundation. Now, if the foundation is not there, it really doesn't matter how nice the couch looks, right? Similarly, for digital content, structure is that foundation. Now, here is a very common example. Let us say you enlarge text and bold it to create a section title in one of the syllabus or policy documents. Now, visually, it might look perfect to you. But if that text is not marked as an actual heading, a screen reader user will not even recognize it as a heading or a section, or even a keyboard user, if they want to jump directly to headings, they would not, because it is not tagged as one. But when you use a real heading instead of just a bigger font, you get the best of both the worlds. It looks exactly the way you want, and it tells the technology that this is a heading. The same idea applies to color. Now, suppose you use red or blue to highlight important deadline or instructions. Now, that is a great visual cue, but we need to understand color does not, color alone actually does not translate to everyone. So just by adding simple words like deadline or important note along with the color, you make sure that the message reaches to all, whether someone is using a screen reader, viewing the content on a phone in a bright sunlight, or has color blindness. Tables are another place where looks can be misleading. So we often use tables to line up things neatly, which visually works really well. But when a table is used just for layout and not for actual data, a screen reader user will try to read it like a data table, and the content can sound completely scrambled. So using proper structure like heading, spacing, can actually give you that same clean layout without confusing the document's digital map. So it is not about removing style or decoration. Instead, it is about making sure your design has a brain behind it. So when structure and visual design work together, your content not just looks professional, it becomes clear and accessible for everyone. Next slide, please. Now, this is where everything really comes together, because structure does not just help some users, but it actually works for everyone. Let us start with screen reader users. When a document is structured properly, someone using a screen reader can navigate it the same way that you would visually perceive it. They can actually jump straight to headings, skip past sections that they do not need to read, and understand tables without getting lost. So instead of listening to the entire document from top to bottom, they get the control to scan it at their own pace. But the benefits do not stop there. Think about how you personally interact with digital content. Sometimes you probably skim more than you read, or you might jump directly to the part of a syllabus that explains grading, or scroll straight up to the deadline in an email. So clear headings and logical structure make that faster and less frustrating for everyone, not only for people with disabilities. Structure is also crucial in mobile devices. For example, a document that feels fine in a laptop can become painful to read on a phone if it is just one long block of text. Now, when tags like headings, lists, spacing, etc., are used correctly, content adapts more gracefully across screens, whether it's desktop, tablet, phone, or even printed pages. So, good semantic structure does a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes. It actually creates content that is clean, consistent, and organized, and that helps everyone navigate, learn, and succeed no matter how or where they are accessing the information. Next slide, please. Okay, so now let us start at the very beginning. Uh, so if semantic tags are the digital GPS, the document title is the destination name. So think about Netflix or a bookstore. You do not click video one or pick a book with book A, title book A or title book B, right? Instead, you look for the title to know if it is exactly what you're looking for. So this is the same thing that works with your files and your digital materials. The title is not just the text at the top of the page. It is actually stored in the document properties where assistive technology looks at first. Now, here is why it matters so much when someone using a screen reader opens a file, which could be a syllabus, a training guide, or a campus form. The very first thing they hear is that title. If it is clear, like syllabus intro to biology or campus safety procedure 2026, they are in the right place or they know what they are going to read. Now, if it is messy, like document one or final V3, it can be very confusing and frustrating. So, this small detail can create a big impact, and it is not just for screen reader users, I guess. Think about your own browser tabs or shared folders. Now, if you have got a dozen tabs open, which I'm sure most of us do, um, or even a folder which is full of PDF and Word files, clear descriptive title will help everyone find what they need quickly without even guessing. So, how do we make good titles clear and concise? So instead of it's quite easy. Like instead of saying handout or form one, use something meaningful or short like week three Greek art handout or faculty leave request form. This way, it will tell immediately what the file name or title is. Once the title is set, the next step definitely is to look inside the document, how the text is structured, how it flows, and how it is designed, so that anyone can navigate it efficiently. But getting the title right is your first impression, and in the digital world, it matters more than most of us realize. Next slide, please. Now that we have a clear descriptive title, the next step is to make sure the content itself is easy to read. Now, we've all opened a document that looks like a wall of text with tiny fonts, no breaks, everything crammed up together, and felt how our eyes starts to glaze over. So the goal here is to make the text friendly and approachable for every reader. Now, think about road signs for a second. They do not use fancy curly fonts, long sentences, or everything in all caps. Instead, they use clear, simple fonts with good spacing between the letters so that the information is easy to process and even faster. Now, that is exactly what we want for our documents. Fonts like Arial, Calibri, Roboto, or even or Open Sans mainly are much easier on eyes, especially when reading on a screen, as they are less decorative and also called as sans serif font. So these fonts act like clear lighting for the words, and they make reading effortless for everyone. Here's another example. Think about text messages. Now, if someone sends you one giant paragraph with no breaks, you'll have to read it maybe twice or thrice just to figure out the where and the when. But if they use short sentences and line breaks, the information immediately pops up. That is the same principle we use for documents, slides, or emails. Breaking up long blocks of text using headings and creating bullets or short paragraphs makes scanning effortless and reduces frustration. So, even small layout choices really matter a lot. Like aligning your text left may seem minor to you, but the truth is, our eyes love a consistent starting point. When we center or fully justify the text, the starting point moves from line to line, which makes the brain work harder even to track where the next line begins. We also have a few other things to keep in mind. That is to make your font at least minimum 12 points for documents and 24 points for slides. And also try to avoid writing long sentences in all caps. Our brain recognizes words and shapes naturally. But uh, if a text is in all caps, it turns them into rectangles, which actually slows down the reading and makes comprehension even harder. So, by paying attention to these small details, choosing a clean font, breaking up text, and aligning it consistently, you are basically creating a structure and a structured, actually, and accessible document for everyone. Next slide, please. Let us now talk about color because it is something we all love to use. And at the same time, it can be tricky when not used in the right manner for accessibility. So, color definitely is a powerful tool as it draws attention, organizes information, and can make learning even more engaging. But it is also one of the easiest thing to get wrong at. Now, here's the catch. We cannot rely on color alone to convey meaning or any important information. Let's take a chart, for example, where red means urgent and green means okay. Now, what would it convey to someone who is colorblind or if the document is printed in black and white? Suddenly, that entire urgent message disappears. Let's look at another example. Imagine you're designing a course registration guide and you use a red highlight to mark the drop deadline. Now, if someone is using a screen reader or if someone prints the guide in grayscale, all that red highlighting disappears at once. But if you also include a word in text like deadline or even in symbol like asterisk or exclamation mark with the right information, the meaning comes clearly for everyone. And that is the key. Color should definitely enhance your message, not be the only way that someone can get any information. Another tip is to choose readable color combination. So basically with good contrast, we'll be talking about it more in our upcoming slide. So here is the major takeaway for color. It can guide attention, make your content visually appealing and support meaning, but it should never be the only signal, and try to always pair it with text, symbols, or labels so that everyone can understand it clearly. Once you start thinking this way, your document, slides, communication will not only look better, they actually work better for everyone. Next slide, please. Now that we have talked about color, let's focus on how clearly those colors stand out from each other. So this is what we are going to talk about is color contrast. So it is basically the punch between the text and the background it sits on. So we've all seen a slide with pale yellow text on white background or dark blue text on a black background. You would notice people squinting, leaning forward, or just giving up because the words are practically vibrating against the screen. Low contrast like that is basically asking someone to do a visual workout just to read a single sentence. Now, imagine someone trying to check your content on their phone while waiting for a bus. If the sun hits the screen and the text does not pop up enough from the background, the content disappears. That is why high contrast combinations like black on white, cream or cream on black, etc., works perfect. In terms of accessibility guidelines, if we talk about contrast ratio, for regular text under 18 point or bold text under 14 point, the contrast ratio should be at least 4.5:1. And for larger text that is 18 points or more, or bold text that is 14 points or larger, a contrast ratio of 3:1 works well. So it doesn't mean that you only need to use black and white to create that contrast. You can use different color combinations unless you're following this contrast ratio. Now, if you want to use colors for headings, call out boxes, examples, make sure that there is a sharp difference between the background and the foreground so that the text pops up. Also, try to avoid layering colors or adding shadows and gradients behind text since they tend to blur the edges and reduces readability for everyone. A quick way to check your accessibility is by running the accessibility checker, which you'll find available in Word, Docs, Canvas, etc. So the big takeaway here is strong contrast is not just a style choice. It actually makes your content readable for everyone, whether they're accessing in a bright sunlight or in a classroom. Next slide, please. Now, headings are truly the backbone of accessible and well-organized content. You can think of heading like a GPS for your content. Whether you are a faculty member building a syllabus or a staff member drafting a 20-page policy manual, headings are what prevents your readers from getting lost in the woods of a giant wall of text. They actually give your content a logical flow that tells both the human brain and assistive technology how different pieces of information relate to each other. For someone using a screen reader, headings are a total game changer. They can pull up list of all the road signs in your documents and jump straight to the section they want to without scrolling endlessly. Same goes for the keyboard only user. Now, here's a common mistake we all make by highlighting a line of text or making it bold and increasing the font size. That looks like a heading, but to a computer, it is just a bold text. For a heading to actually function, you need to use the built-in heading styles that you would find in Word, Google Docs, Canvas, and most of the platforms. And here is the golden rule. Always try to keep them in an order. Start with heading 1 for your main title, heading 2 for major sections, and heading 3 for subpoints. So skipping a level, going straight from heading 1 to heading 3, just because the font size looks better, would be something like a staircase with a missing step. So it can actually create a lot of confusion and makes the overall document feel broken to someone who's navigating with this assistive technology. Now, when you follow the logical order heading ladder, you're actually creating a professional, predictable roadmap that makes your work easier to skim for everyone. So headings are not just formatting, they're actually a navigation tool, also an accessibility booster, and a simple way to make your content structured. Next slide, please. Lists are one of the easiest way to make information clear and quick to absorb, but only if they are tagged correctly. Now, the key is to always use built-in bullet or numbering tools in your program, whether it is Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Canvas, etc. So it might be tempting to type your own dashes or asterisks, but screen readers do not recognize those as real list items. So important information can actually get missing for someone who's relying on assistive technology. When you use the built-in bullet or number for list, you're actually doing more than just formatting. You're adding hidden structure that acts like a heads up for screen reader user. So instead of hearing a string of sentences, someone using assistive technology would hear something like list of 5 items, which immediately gives them a mental map of how much information they're about to process. So it is like a difference between getting a stack of loose papers versus a neatly stapled packet. One more thing we should be mindful about while creating a list is in a document, if the chronological order matters, like if you want someone to follow the sequence, for example, how to submit your final project, use a numbered list. And if it is just a collection of relatable items like recommended readings, you can actually use bullet points. So this might seem like a very small detail, but for anyone navigating the document with keyboard or using assistive technology, these real functional lists provide clarity and predictability, making your content more professional and easy to follow. Next slide, please. Let us now talk about links. One of the most common accessibility issue that you come across is vague text, vague link text, actually. So we've all seen phrases like click here, read more, or this link. But these do not actually tell anyone what the link is about or where that link leads to. Especially for a screen reader user, that is very frustrating because when their device lists all the links on a page, they just hear a series of click here or read more. Now, the fix is very simple and effective. Make your links descriptive and meaningful on their own. So instead of writing to see the detail, click here, you can just say human resources benefit guide. It is so clear that even someone before clicking the link would know what they are heading to. Also, avoid pasting raw web addresses or leaving links as plain text, as it can be very, very frustrating to access, even for sighted users. Like imagine a text of URL which is not tagged as a link on your phone. Now, if you want to activate it, instead of double tapping on it, you would have to copy the entire URL and paste it in a browser. And it will be very annoying as well as time consuming, right? So think of links like putting up clear signpost where anyone accessing it would immediately know what is on the other side of the click. So descriptive links actually make navigation smoother. It reduces confusion and definitely creates a more confident experience for everyone accessing the material. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have images now and how to make sure they tell a story for everyone. Now, we often add visuals, diagrams in lectures, charts, policy guides, or photos in a newsletter to reinforce a point. Now, for someone who is blind or has low vision, an image without a description is just like a blank space. That is where alternative text comes into picture. Now, think of it like a behind the scenes caption for images. So, if a screen reader encounters an image with no description or alternative text, it would just read as image or graphic image or picture, which actually gives no information about what the picture has. With alternative text, you're actually giving that image a voice. The trick is to keep it concise and purposeful. So you do not need to describe every single detail unless it is important, like charts, data, etc. But for example, if you're showing a chart of rising tuition cost, your alt text should not just say chart or image of a chart. It should say something like line graph showing increasing tuition charts from 2020 to 2025. Find the detailed table below. Now, this way, someone who cannot see will get the key message immediately what this image contains. On the other hand, we also have images or icons which are completely decorative in nature, something which do not give any information, like it could be a swirl in a newsletter or photo of a campus building, which is just added to enhance visual design. Such images or icons do not need alternative text, and you can actually go ahead and mark it as decorative, which lets screen reader users know that it is decorative and they can completely skip it. So the bottom line here is simple. If the image adds meaning, describe it. If it is just for style, mark as decorative, and do not keep the alternative text vague or too detailed. Doing this can simply turn visuals into powerful, inclusive tools that can actually communicate the message to everyone, whether they are looking at the screen or they are listening through assistive technology. Next slide, please. Tables can be incredibly useful, but when it is used correctly, they can also become very frustrating and confusing if it is not set up properly. Now, it is very important to use tables strictly for organizing data and not for controlling the layout or spacing of your page. So one of the most common mistake is simply bolding the text to indicate table headers. Instead, you should always use the built-in table tools to mark header rows and columns. This would help assistive technologies understand the structure and read the table correctly. Make sure to avoid merge cells or leave I would say do not leave blank columns because it can actually break the reading order and make the information really hard to follow for anyone who's reading with a screen reader. For example, an ineffective table might have merged cells, random empty spaces, and inconsistent alignment, which can make it very difficult to interpret. In contrast, an accessible table would have one clear header, row with proper headers, no merged cells, and consistent alignment throughout. So if you have a large and complex table with a lot of data in it, it is a very good idea to, I would say it is a very good practice to add a brief description before it, something like a title to the table, which will actually help everyone know what to expect before they even dive it into the table. Also, try to keep tables of a reasonable size, like ideally 5 to 7 column wise, and avoid nesting tables inside one another, since most of the screen reader and keyboard only users really struggle with nested tables. So when tables are well designed and thoughtfully described, they actually become powerful tools that makes data clear, accessible, and easy to understand. Next slide, please. Now, the best part about all of this is that you do not have to be an accessibility expert to get it right. You actually have a team of accessibility assistants built right into your software that you're already using on a daily basis. In Word or PowerPoint, for example, there is a check accessibility button under the Review tab, which is basically like a spell checker but for accessibility. So it would scan your document and flag things like missing alternative text, low contrast, or skipped heading levels. The helpful part is that it does not just tell you that there is a problem, it actually gives you a quick how to fix guide right on the side of the screen. No guesswork, no hunting around, just a click and your document is more accessible. Now, if you're creating a content directly in Canvas, you can watch out for a small accessibility icon in the rich content editor. One click and it will show any accessibility issues on your page. For Google Docs users, the Grackle add-on is very helpful that checks accessibility in your documents. Now, for anyone who's managing a website or a public-facing page, the Wave tool or Axe Dev tool is free and very helpful. So you enter your page address and it shows a visual overlay of possible accessibility issues. Now, it is a small habit that takes just a few minutes, but it can actually save someone hours of frustration. Now, think of these tools like your digital co-pilots, helping your content work for everyone. Next slide, please. To wrap things up, let us do a quick mental checklist like accessibility in a flash. So now before you hit a save or send button, make sure to ask yourself these simple 8 questions. Can someone tell exactly what this document is from the title? If someone is using a screen reader, can they jump through it quickly using headings? Is the text easy to read and scan, or will they be squinting? If you stripped away every bit of color, would your message still make sense? Are your links clear signposts, or they are just generic click here phrases? If there is an image, does it add meaning? And did you explain that meaning in the alternative text? Are your tables used only for data, not for layout tricks? And finally, did you take a moment to run your accessibility checker? Now, here's a key part. These are not just tips for any particular platform, that is, it works only for Word, Google, or no. These are the universal building blocks of digital accessibility that forms a base structure of accessible content. Once you understand these principles or these tags in any of the tool, you can apply them anywhere, whether it is a document, a website, or an email. Now, if you can answer yes to all the above 8 questions, you're actually not just creating a compliant document, you're creating a professional, high quality content that works for everyone. So it is a small set of steps, but it adds a huge impact. And once it becomes a habit, accessible content is not any extra work. It simply becomes the way you do things on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So today was just the beginning of this journey. We have sessions lined up for accessible images for STEM faculty, as well as images for arts and humanities faculties. We also have session video accessibility, and last but not the least, accessibility in Excel. So stay tuned for our upcoming sessions. Before we wrap up, let us watch a quick demo to see how all of this behaves in real life. Nitesh, can you please move to the next slide and play the video? Hello, everyone. So we have a Word document open here with some content. Visually, you will be able to see some headings, lists, etc. But none of these are semantically tagged. So I'll quickly show you how it reads with screen reader. You'll also be able to hear the screen reader as well as see it text's output on top of the screen. So now let's see when I try to check for the headings.
Click keys on. No more headings found.
It says no headings found. Let's check with the list.
No lists found.
No lists either. Now let's check for the links.
Page 3. Link. Click here.
It has one link which says click here. We'll talk about it a little later. Let's check if it has any images.
Page 2. Picture.
It has an image and it reads only as picture. So none of the semantically tags are added here. And for a screen reader plus a keyboard user, it is going to be very tricky because they will have to navigate line by line. They cannot jump to any section. And it is still possible in a short document, but in a lengthier document, it can be really frustrating. So now let's start adding the tags.
Page 1. Top of file. Digital access.
So because this is the main heading, I'm going to add it as heading 1.
Selected. Digital accessibility. Alt Control 1. Heading level 1. Digital accessibility: building an inclusive digital world.
Now visually also you see it as a heading and it is also identified as a heading 1. With the screen reader, similarly, I'm going to add other subheadings as heading 2.
Blank. And our increased digital ramps. Blank. What is digital accessibility? Home. Selected. What is digital? Alt Control 2. Blank. Heading level 2. What is digital accessibility? Digital website. Everyone. It is more product person with disability. Blank. Why it matters. Home. Selected. Why it matters. Alt Control 2. Blank. Heading level 2. Why it matters. The importance of digital.
So also here, if you could see, we have added the heading tags, and the heading level is important to identify for a screen reader user to let them know which level of or which heading they are referring to.
Star the social.
Now here are some lists and it is not identified as a list by the screen reader. So let me add the numbering tab here.
The star the social. Home. Selected. Star the social and ethical lens. Upper ribbon H, N, numbering I, 2, A, B, C, align, enter, ribbon, enter. The importance of A, the social and ethical lens: access to information is a human right, ensuring entering list.
So it says entering list, that is, it has been identified as a list now. Let me do the same for the other numbers.
Access disability, star the business lens, home, stop, space, T, space, star, B, period, space, B, blank, period, space, enter, B, this, B, the business, home. H. Billion business power load time star the quote curve home space E space star C period space auto.
So now all this has been identified as a list. Now let's check the image.
G. Quick keys on page 2 picture.
So here we have a picture of depicting accessibility. Now there are two things that can be done here. Either we can add an alternative text or mark it as decorative.
Home.
So right now it is only reading as a picture, so I won't know what it has. So let's add an alternative text here.
Picture to image 16 point select group cut copy add change bring send to link split group insert cap wrap text sub view alt text size view alt text leaving menus demo dash tagging dash generate alt text.
So here you see an option
description
where you can type the alternative text or
generate alt text for me button.
You can generate the alt text.
Approve alt text checkbox not check mark as decorative.
And if you want to mark that image as decorative, you can check this checkbox and save it. So in that case, the screen reader will identify that it is a decorative image. Now let's generate some alternative text and add it.
Approve, generate alt space, approve alt text checkbox not checked, give feedback, description edit contains text, type in text. AI-generated content may be incorrect. Approve alt text, description edit contain space, period. Top of file, photograph of a diverse classroom. So
it has a lengthier alternative text. I'm sure this you can edit as per your convenience and how accurate it is. So make sure whenever you're generating the alternative text using AI, make sure to check its accuracy. For now, I will approve this.
Approve alt text checkbox not checked, space checked.
And save it.
Escape, photograph of a diverse.
Now if I navigate to the image.
Line escape, blank. Photograph of a diverse classroom with students working on laptops while a teacher stands near a large screen displaying programming code. The room features large windows, plants, bookshelves, and educational posters highlighting an inclusive and technology-focused learning environment. Image.
So this looks a little lengthier, which you can definitely adjust in the same window, like we added this alternative text. Now let's move to the table that we have.
Blank. Table 1. Non-uniform table. New cell. Disability.
So here now, when as a screen reader, when I'm navigating to this table, I do not know what this table contains. So it's always advisable to add an invisible title to this table. So we keep the focus on the first cell and go to table properties.
Shift group. Copy. Summary. Synonym. Read. Translate. Insert. Sub. Delete cells. Split cell. Border. Stop. Group. Text. Direction. Table properties. Page 2. Leaving menus. Tab. OK button. Cancel. Row tab selected.
So first in the row tab.
Specify. Allow row to break. Repeat as header row at the top of each page. Checkbox not checked.
So this repeat as row header, I would check this
Space.
checkbox. Why? Because if the table is split into multiple pages, the screen reader will identify the row header even if it is in another page.
Previous row button. Next. OK button. Cancel button. Row tab. Column. Cell. Alt text.
I move to the alt text tab.
Title. Edit.
And I'll give it a title. So I'll just say
LIST space OF space DIFERENTSTYPES space DISABILTES.
and I press enter.
Enter. Table 1.
Now,
Out of
when I move to the table, this is what it will read.
list of different types of disabilities. Non-uniform table. New cell. Disability. Visual. Row 2 of 5. Barriers faced. Blindness. Low vision. Color blindness. Assistive technology. Left parent and right parent solutions. Screen readers. Left parent JAWS. NVDA right parent. Screen magnifiers. Braille displays.
So as you could hear and see, it read all the information and it was not confusing for me what is the column header or what data I am in. Now let's quickly jump to the link we have.
Quick keys on. Page 3. Link. Click here. Quick keys off.
Before this,
The primaries HTTP.
we have one more link here, which is added as a text. So even for a mouse only users, you cannot click here and activate the link. So because it is only copied as a text, so it is very important to add a link tag here. For now, I'll show you how it reads.
Standard https://www.w3.org/y/.
So this is what it reads. So I'll just add the link tag.
End. Blank.
I just need to go to the end and press enter.
Enter. Link 8.
It is converted into a link now. And now let's go and add a link description here, because this URL can be very confusing where it leads. So let's add a name here.
Ship group. Cut unavailable. Copy paste option. Leaving menu. Stand. Link 8. Home. Link T. Quick keys on. Quick keys off. Ship group. Copy paste op. Group. Edit hyperlink. Link.
I go to edit hyperlink and
Text to
text to display.
Select space. Double CAGGILGURDELIES. Enter. Print. Stand. Link. WCAG guidelines.
Now it reads as a link, and it also tells me if I click this where it is going to lead.
Blank. The primary link. Click here. Book.
Now here it has the link tag, but the click here information, the name that has been provided is very vague, and it can be very confusing, even for a sighted user as well as a screen reader user. So let's edit this name.
Oh. Home. Link. L. Link. Ship group. Edit hyperlink. Link. Text to this edit. EBAIM. Enter. Print view. The prime link. Web page.
So now it is reading right with the screen reader and is quite understandable. Now let's jump to the last line of this document.
Bottom of file. Blank. Bookmark. End bookmark. Digital accessibility isn't a feature.
So here visually you can see this has been emphasized by changing the font to bold, italicized, and underlined. But this information that it has emphasized does not read with the screen reader. It just reads as a normal plain text. So what can be done is either you can add a text as note, emphasize, or important, or you can just add quotes there.
Home. Home. D quote. Bottom of 5. Blank. 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 Bookmark. End bookmark. L. Y. Bookmark. Blank. Period. Blank. Quote. End blank. Left quote. Digital accessibility isn't a feature M dash it's a commitment to ensuring everyone can bookmark, participate equally and independently. Right quote.
So now it is in quotes, so it is identified by the screen reader user that it is emphasized or it is something important. Now let's see how it reads with the shortcut keys.
Page 1. Quick keys on. Heading 2. What is digital accessibility? Heading 2. Why it matters? No more headings found. Entering list A. The social.
So I can quickly jump between headings and lists. Now quickly, I can also create a table of content using these headings.
Top of file. Heading blank. Upper ribbon S. Reference E. Table of contents. Built dash in. Automatic table 1. Automatic enter. Ribbon. Demo dash tagging dash and are increasingly blank. Table of link. Why it matters. Link. What is it? Link. Digital table of content.
So as you can see, whatever headings were given the heading tag, automatically it has been taken as a table of content, which can be very easy for a keyboard user or a screen reader user, or even for a sighted user directly to jump on any
Link.
section they refer to. And also, if you notice, the last section, that is the resources tool sections where we had our list, that was not marked as a heading, and that is why it is not included in this. So that's all for the demo. Thank you so much.
Demo session vertical.
Thank you, Ish. Thank you, everyone. We can now take up the questions that you have.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. Okay, so we are going to take all these questions in the Q&A. Nitesh will have them, and over the next couple of days, he will answer them in the questions and answers. If you scroll through, you'll see I gave you a variety of resource guides, color checkers. I put a few of them in the chat as well. I'm going to ask our other expert, Paige, to do a step-by-step in Word how to add in tagging, alt tag, and descriptive URL to an existing Word document. You saw that demonstrated by Serby, so Paige will do the accompany step-by-step that you all asked for. This question, I wasn't exactly sure. This was in the beginning when you were talking about color contrast and color style. She writes, in reference to pairing color with text or symbols, you mentioned using asterisks. Please clarify, are asterisks an accessible way to indicate that information is important without making it into a heading or using another type of tagging?
So this is a very good question. So you can definitely use asterisks, but you need to inform somewhere as a text that wherever you see asterisk or here asterisk, it is all the important points are marked as asterisk, or all the red highlighted color are marked as asterisks. So that would let the user know that what it stands for.
Okay. And I know we have separate sessions on images, so we'll hit this there. But if somebody has created a PowerPoint and in their PowerPoint they're using arrows, will the screen reader read the arrow, not an arrow that they've created with dashes and a greater than, but the actual arrow image? Will the screen reader read it?
It depends sometimes on the screen reader. So JAWS and VoiceOver, they are like one of the powerful screen readers which identifies labels even if they're not mentioned. But as an accessibility practice, if you're using arrows, it's always advisable to use a text. For example, left or right, or something that makes sense. Like if there is a left arrow for previous slide and right arrow for next slide, use the same text.
She
Previous
means
slide
it
and
like
next slide.
she means it like in chemistry. She's shown because you do in chemistry experiments and in chemistry. Let me do this one more time. In chemical equations, they use arrows.
Yeah. So if you use arrows, so what happens is these additional symbols, like which are not used on a daily basis, some of the screen reader might not identify it. So what you can do to make someone understand is add a text left arrow, or it is related to that. So give that information in text, because some symbols might not be identified by the screen, by all the screen readers, I would say. So I'll definitely take it in an elaborative way in our upcoming session for images.
Okay, thank you. They asked for a how-to guide. We'll get that. Um, can we use generative AI for alt text? I said yes, but make sure that you review it. And in your prompt, you have to give some context. You can have a picture or an image, and if you tell it that you're teaching a sociology, a family class, it may provide that alt text a little differently than if you were to say you were teaching a biology class. So make sure in generative AI that you are giving the image. In PowerPoint, if there's a photograph with a caption, do they still need alt tag? I said yes. Was I right?
If that photo is informative, yes, definitely it needs an alternative text. But if it is only for decorative purpose or adding some visual aspect to it, then you can just give a small alternative text, need not be a full description.
Okay, so I do want to thank everybody. We will go through these questions, answer them in detail, continue to provide you with resources. Next week on Tuesday, you'll get our Tech Tip Tuesday that will have the recording, hopefully the answers to the questions as well, and a list of other webinars. Please note that in early February, we have 2 sessions for UDO Advantage for people who are using Canvas and looking for the accessibility checker there. I want to thank Serbi. I want to thank Nitesh, and I'm going to close the recording.